Now let's talk about structuring your writing number 1 essay. What do you need to know? So here is a typical plan of the reading passage and the listening passage. Usually in the reading passage we have some kind of a theory, and then we have 3 reasons why this theory is great. So there is a great theory, reason number 1 why it is great, reason number 2 why it is great, and reason number 3 why it is great. And then in the listening passage the lecturer usually says the opposite. He explains why the theory is really bad. So he also says why reason number 1 is bad, why reason number 2 is bad, and why reason number 3 is bad. Alright, so let's look at a simpler example. Of course, you're not going to have this example at the real exam, but this is a simple example for us to understand the logic of the structuring of the writing number 1. So let's say that the reading talks about apples, and of course the reading says that the apples are great. The reading talks about their smell is great, about their taste, the taste is great, and about their look is also great. So the listening, of course, is going to contradict everything the reading says. So the listening starts with saying that apples are awful. And then the listening says that the smell is awful, the taste is awful, and their look is also awful. So you see here that the reading passage has 3 points, and then the listening passage has same 3 points. Smell, taste, and look. They're all talking about smell, taste, and look. But the reading passage has the position that they are all great, and the listening passage has the position that they are all awful. But they're talking about the same factors, the same qualities of apples. So we have 2 structures which we can use to summarize these points. Let's talk about both of these structures. 2 ways to structure your essay. So for both of these options, we're going to write the same introduction. The introduction is always going to be like both reading and listening discuss this topic. For example, both reading and listening discuss apples. But then we have 2 options how to structure our essay. One option is to go point by point. So we know that both reading and listening talked about the smell of apples, the taste of apples, and the look of apples. So we're going to structure our essay in the same way. We're going to devote the first paragraph to their smell of apples, and we're going to discuss both reading and listening in this paragraph. Then we're going to devote the second paragraph to apples' taste, and we're again going to talk about reading and listening together in this paragraph. And then finally we're going to talk about apples' look, and we're going to talk about reading and listening in this paragraph together. The other option for us is to combine everything that the reading said in one paragraph, in the first paragraph, and then combine everything that the listening said in the second paragraph. So we are basically structuring our information the way it was presented to us, right? We read the text in the very beginning, then the listening followed our text. So we start summarizing everything by saying what we read in the text, and then in the next paragraph we say what we listened to in the listening passage. So we are presenting the information in the same order we had it. In the first structure, however, you need to recombine all the information, okay? So you had the reading, you had the listening, but while you're writing, you're going to take a point from the reading, a point from the listening, combine together. Then another point from the reading, another point from the listening, combine in the second paragraph. The third point from the reading and the third point from the listening, combine together in your third paragraph. So this is a more advanced structure. The second structure, this one, is an easier structure because you're not going to summarize something differently, combine different things together in something new. You're just going to retell everything the way you had it, the way you read it, the way you listened to it, the way you got it, the way it was presented to you. So the second structure is a little bit easier, because you don't have to do any combination, any summarizing, you don't have to create a new structure, you're just going to say everything the way it was presented to you. The first structure is a little bit more difficult. However, usually it is pretty easy for you to combine things because the way the reading and the listening are structured is very similar. It is always the first point in the reading with the first point from the listening. They're connected because this one is opposite. Then the second point from the reading is rejected by the second point from the listening, so it's easy for you to combine them. And then the third point from the reading is rejected by the third point from the listening, so it's easy to combine them as well. Just like in the example with the apples here. But sometimes there are situations where it's all a mess. So sometimes we might be unlucky to have this reading and listening in our writing number 1. We have a text and it has an idea and it has some points, but the way it is structured is not exactly the same it is structured in the listening. So we have the listening later, and it has the opposite point, but the arguments there are in a little bit of a mess. So you can't really say which argument from the reading is rejected by which argument from the listening. It's a little bit a mess in here and in there. In this case, of course, your option is structure number 2. It makes your life much easier. You're just gonna say everything you got from the reading, everything you got from the listening. Same works with the situations where something went wrong during your reading or listening. Perhaps you didn't understand something from reading or listening. Perhaps you got distracted, you missed some information from the listening, something happened. Of course, in this case, your option is structure number 2, because in this case, you can just avoid something you didn't hear and then still have a well-structured essay. But if everything works very well and you see a very good structure of the reading and a very good structure from the listening, and it is combining very easily, then you can go for the structure number 1. So the structure number 1 is more advanced, and it is somewhat evaluated a little bit better because it shows that you have a very good command of English, you write essays easily, you combine the information easily, you can summarize everything very easily, so it shows your skill a little bit better. However, the second structure, although it is easier, if you write it well, if you do not miss important points, then you can get a maximum score with the structure as well. So you should always evaluate which structure works best in this particular situation. While you're practicing, you can try using both structures, see how it works, how it goes, and when you're on the real exam, you should choose the structure which will work best with your material. After you choose a structure and you finish summarizing everything, you have a conclusion. And no matter which structure you choose, the conclusion is always going to be the same. To sum up, this is how the listening passage causes doubts on the points made in the reading passage. So you can always write it like that, it's fine, it will work with any kind of writing number 1. So you can just memorize it if you want. Alright, so let's come back to our realistic writing number 1, because usually we don't talk about apples, we talk about theories. So the reading says that there's a great theory and it has 3 reasons why the theory is great. The listening says that the theory is really bad and it has 3 reasons why the theory is bad. And the reasons are the same as in the reading, but it rejects all the reasons one by one. So we have 2 structures to write this essay. So the introduction is going to be the same no matter which structure we choose. We are going to say that both reading and listening discuss the theory that, and we're going to name the theory. So we are going to name the uniting idea of both of our passages. Then we're choosing the structure. Let's have a look at structure number 1. We start our paragraph by saying, first, according to the reading, the theory is great because of, and we name reason number 1. However, the listening passage states that, and we name why the reason number 1 is wrong according to the listening. Then we discuss all of that in details, we retell all the information, we summarize it, and then we go to paragraph number 2, where we are going to discuss the reason number 2 and summarize what reading and listening both said about reason number 2. Second, the text suggests reason number 2. In contrast, the lecturer mentions that, and we discuss why the reason 2 is wrong according to the listening. Then we're going to the third paragraph, and here we discuss the reason number 3 and what both reading and listening said about that reason number 3. Third, the reading passage states that, reason number 3, however, in the listening passage, blah 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 blah, and we discuss why the listening passage didn't like the reason number 3. Okay, so after we are done with this structure, we continue with the conclusion, which is always, to sum up, this is how the listening passage causes doubts on the points made in the reading passage. Now let's have a look at the structure number 2, where we combine everything we learned from the reading in the first paragraph, and then everything we learned from the listening in the second paragraph. So paragraph number 1. The reading passage states that the theory is legitimate. First, it states that, reason number 1. Second, it mentions that, reason number 2. Finally, reason number 3. Then we are moving to the second paragraph, where we are going to discuss the listening passage and everything it said about the theory. However, the listening passage disagrees with the statement made in the reading. According to the lecturer, reason number 1 is wrong. Moreover, why reason number 2 is wrong. Also, why reason 3 is wrong. So we're summarizing everything we learned from the listening here in this second paragraph. After that, we again use the same conclusion we use all the time. To sum up, this is how the listening passage causes doubts on the points made in the reading. So you should always think about what is the best, what is the most working structure in your particular situation in this particular writing number 1. If it's easy for you to do the structure number 1, do the structure number 1. Practice it because it looks slightly better. Then if there are any problems, if something is in a mess, or if you missed some information, go for structure number 2 because it's also a great structure and it is easier to do. Okay? Thanks for watching.